I'm going to call our meeting to order. Today is April 25th, 2017, and this is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. If I could everyone please rise and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Boswell.
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins. Here. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mrs. McGovern. Here. Ms. Stevens. Here. Mr. Schott. And student representative.
Here. And could you please call the calendar?
Wednesday, May 3rd, 2017, there will be a CLAC meeting at Davisville Academy starting at noon. Tuesday, May 9th, 2017, there will be a school committee business meeting at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Then first item on our agenda is a presentation on the E-rate and special construction. Mr. Waterman, if you could let us know where we stand.
Well, thank you for having me back for more exciting E-rate and special construction talk. After my last one, you invited me back, so I'm very thankful. So, quick review, and then I'll get into the meat and potatoes. So this is what we currently have this year. This is the cost to the school district that is reimbursed through the RIT fund that I mentioned. So the Rhode Island Department of Education pays Cox Communications $102,000 for our internet transportation costs for all of our buildings, and these are the speeds at which we get for each building. I have heard, now I haven't seen it officially from RIDE for next year, that the numbers for Davisville Middle School and all of our elementary schools are going to double. So with the exception of the administrative building, which will remain at 250 megabytes, the elementary schools are going up to 500 megabytes or half a gigabyte. Davisville, Wickford, and the high school will all be at 1 gig for next year. I have not seen costs on that, and I have not officially received that. It's just kind of coming down word of mouth right now. So we'll jump right into it. We received the bids. There were two bidders. It was Cox Communications and Ocean. This represents the Ocean bid, which is my recommendation to you. And all the supporting documentation, there was a pretty lengthy Excel sheet is in your packet where we broke out the costs from year 1 straight through year 20. Their construction costs came in at $348,474. Their installation, engineering, and splicing is $30,000. The project management is $12,000. And the total construction was $390,474, of which North Kingston School Department would pay half, and E-rate would pay the other half. The number that I gave you last time was approximately $560,000. So you can see that through the formal bid process, the numbers did come down. And it did have to do a lot with they were able to run less line by utilizing cut-throughs. So that was to our benefit. If we were to move forward with this project, we would have annual recurring costs, and the fiber maintenance would be required for each year, and that would be $12,905. The next two fees are what lights are dark fiber. So that first number, I'm going to go back one slide. Whoop. This number here represents a dark fiber. So that's just a cable that's run to each building. The limits on that cable right now, and I think we all had a chuckle when Jason McGuire, our network manager, said it's the speed of light. Well, we did a little more research, and it is just under the speed of light is the capability of a fiber optic cable at this time. So depending on what ends you put on the cable dictates your speed. The annual charges, which are, in case a telephone pole comes down, to make sure that the fiber is in good working condition, is $12,905. Our fees to manage the cable, so to manage to make sure we're getting, if we're paying for 10 gigs worth of WAN, to make sure we're getting that full 10 gig is $12,500, and that was bid as part of this RFP. And then the transport fee, so here's where you see the 10 gig transport fee. If we go back to that first slide I showed you, where we saw the breakdowns and we were talking 1 gig or half a gig, what we would have for $18,000 would be a full 10 gig network at each of our buildings. All of these fees are E-ratable, and I have heard, again, nothing in writing, but I have heard that there's another Rhode Island district that went through this process last year and is currently building their project. They're asking, and they're in communications with RIDE right now, to pick up, our fee would be $18,000, but I'm not sure what their fee is, but to have RIDE pick up that transport fee, because they're already paying it for us now. So right now it's $102,000, we'd be asking them for $18,000, of which whatever that balance is, we would then be responsible for half. I'll get to questions at the end, but are there any questions while we're in these numbers? Or do you want me to keep going through and we can come back?
I think I have them, but
Okay.
go through and we'll
Okay.
see what gets answered and we'll come back.
Okay. So this is looking at a 10-year payment projection. Year one, we'd be responsible for the construction of the project, again at our 50% rate. And then years 2 through 10, our annual contribution of 50% of $43,405. Again, that annual number could be lower if RIDE will pick up the transportation fee like they currently do.
And you said that was the...
That was the $18,000. So just a little rewind. I showed this slide in the last one. This is one of the driving reasons why we really want to consider this project. I don't have to go line by line, but you can see that for the past few years, the general revenue has been used to balance this line item, and you can see projections in that it is projected to be negative. So this is kind of the driving force of this is the why. This is why we should consider this. If for whatever reason the RIT fund evaporated, we would be responsible for that $102,000. So in just a couple of years, we would see our return. We would see our payback. Again, I don't want to scare anybody into a decision. I don't see the fund completely disappearing. If action had to be taken, I don't think it would be from 100 to 0. I would see them maybe going with your E-rate percentage, which in our case would be 50%. So we would be responsible for half of that $102,000. Again, that is my opinion. That's nothing that I've heard. And again, this is a slide taken out of the last presentation. The benefits are, and I don't know if you recall at the last presentation, I explained the internet that's out here and then the internet that's kind of cached, which is our Google, YouTube, Netflix, a lot of the services that we use in schools. That's all at a separate layer of the internet where we never actually have to go out to our bandwidth. We would actually stay on our WAN, so we would have that at a 10 gigabit connection, which is instantaneous. Chris, what were they saying? Less than a millisecond? So we were in less than a millisecond. We're hitting servers in Google servers in New York City. I mean, the information would be right there. It would allow us to co-locate equipment, so we could have equipment off-site for disaster recovery, for backup services. Right now, we do backups. Our off-site backup from the data center is Davisville Middle School, but we could put that in Providence. We could put that in any area that's an OSHA member. So colleges, universities, the state data center. We could co-locate equipment. Should we have a catastrophic event in this neck of the woods, an outage, we would still have data being preserved at an off-site location. Told you I'd keep it quick. So we went through a lot at the last presentation. This one was more or less to share the numbers again. I was pleasantly surprised at the number we received from Ocean and with what they're providing us and the support that they've been providing us since I've been here, which is about 15 months now. So I am confident that Ocean is the vendor we should be moving forward with if you so choose.
Okay, questions? No one has any else? Just me? Okay. So let me just make sure that I have my brain wrapped around everything properly. We know, and I completely agree with you on the funding formula for the reimbursements that we currently receive, that fund is currently unsustainable. And as I asked last time, I think the big problem, and I think it can be solved at the General Assembly is that the fund is funded, for those of you who haven't seen this or didn't hear it last time, by a small surcharge, was it like 20 cents or something like that?
26 cents for every
So
landline.
26 cents on every landline in the state of Rhode Island. Well, the problem being, as most people know, the number of landlines in the state of Rhode Island is not what it was 20, 30 years ago, because we all walk around with our cell phones. They are not charged on a cell phone. Now, all the state needs to do to solve the problem with their funding, rather than moving money from the general fund to fill the gaps, which they've done in the past, is to flip that switch in a tax and add a 20, and it might not even be a 20, it might need to be less. A 15-cent tax on every single phone would probably give them more than enough money to cover the same thing. If they were to keep the reimbursements the same, and I know you don't have a crystal ball any more than I do, but if our reimbursement on the internet that we have the same, our only gain would really be we'd have increased speeds and we'd no longer be relying on the state to determine what speed we get, correct?
Correct. We'd no longer be relying. It would be if we ever had to absorb those costs,
Yeah.
this by having the asset, it's significantly cheaper.
Right, but if, let's say we didn't do this, okay? If we do nothing tonight, and the state continued to reimburse, they reimburse 100% right now, correct?
Yes,
On-
they pay 100% of our
100%
transport
of our
costs.
102,660.
Yep.
Okay. So, let's say we do nothing, let's say the state solves their funding problem and continues to fund us at 100%. And, all right, now, and we did this, sorry, I said that wrong. That would mean that we've spent this money, the state would be picking up 50% of our construction costs, but we still spent $195,000. They would be paying, hopefully, $18,000 of our $21,000 yearly fee.
So the construction cost, just to stop it, isn't a state program?
Inside the federal. Sorry,
yes.
okay, whoops, sorry. When I can't bring money, I'm not as worried about where it came from.
Fair enough.
So, let's say we spent the money, we are now paying 21 or $4,000 a year to have this, but our only benefit really would be, assuming the state was reimbursing everyone else at 100%, we now have faster internet everywhere, we're in control of the system, but we wouldn't really have a financial gain at that point, correct? We'd be paying the $195 we paid, and then the few $1,000s every year if the state reimbursed the transport costs. That's really our only benefit. Am I right?
We would have control of it.
Right. We have control, and we have much faster internet in all of our schools.
Correct, and we would be able to upgrade that SE. Right, you've covered it. We wouldn't be relying on somebody else to give us something.
Yeah.
We would have control to take what we want and what we need. If you look back to those guidelines, the SETDA guidelines, those charts that I referenced, they forecast a sharp rise in bandwidth and WAN. So bandwidth is your speed out to the internet. WAN is your wide area network. So that's what allows us to do backups from one location to the other. This goes into the whole, we have right now 10 mini data centers, whereas now we would have one big data center in district, a backup within the district, and then...
Super fast connecting everything.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
So now let me do the other scenario. If the state were to change the funding formula and say, North Kingstown, you now are going to get a 50% reimbursement. Our cost would jump from the zero that it is right now to a $50,000 a year, whatever, give or take, $51,000 a year expense.
Correct.
But if we had done this when this program was available, which it may not be next year or the year after,
Correct.
we would then have spent our $195,000 to put this system in place. And now, instead of having a $50,000 bill at our 50% hypothetical reimbursement, we would only be paying $21,000, or let's say it was still half the 18, or some variation.
Right, so 43,000 minus the 18, divide by 2.
Right. And so now we would be realizing the savings on our investment in addition to having the increased speed, control, and interconnectivity over the out years.
That is correct.
I have, am I wrapping my brain around?
That is correct,
the
yes.
essential question properly? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So now the question is, one thing I asked you, do we need a decision tonight? It very much pains me, though you've been very thorough in your presentations and you're being very thorough here. It's a pretty big expenditure. It would be coming from fund balance. We don't have it budgeted. And, I just don't like making, quick decisions on an item of this import, this much money, and
I understand.
a lot of things to think about.
And we were originally slated to be here at the meeting on the 9th.
Yeah, but I know the numbers weren't in and everything, yeah.
Right, we had discussions with the Department of Labor and Training, so my hope was to give you this presentation on the 9th, be back here so that you had time to digest it. I was going to be here to answer any questions you might have thought of in the 2 weeks. And, right, as you were mentioning, so May 11th, 11:59 p.m., the E-rate portal goes down, and if you've not submitted it, there's no extensions, they don't want to hear it, it's done, it's closed.
And if you're working on it on the 11th and our wonderful network that we have now goes down, we are completely out of luck.
I will be setting up a hotspot on my phone to get it going.
Okay, so I
Is
tried.
that a yes, they need a decision tonight?
No, not necessarily. So the simplest answer to answer that question is that if we do not make a decision tonight, Mr. Waterman will be forced to be very much up against a very, very, very tight 48-hour deadline to put a very complicated proposal in place. I believe it is doable, and I would very much feel for him if that is our decision. But it would certainly be a lot safer deadline-wise and certainly easier for Mr. Waterman if we were to make a decision tonight. But I'll tell you, my instinct is to at least think on it one more week. But let's talk about it. What are people's thoughts?
My concern is our capital,
Yep.
other capital needs in the district. There's so many things that we've been wanting to do, we need to do. I mean, I can't even name. We have so many things we're juggling that we wish we could do.
But we don't have anything that turns a dollar though.
True. Yeah, these are all just expenses.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the way I see it. I just sort of to frame the question. I mean, it's tough for me to make up my mind tonight, which is why I would prefer to be able to think about it, meet with everybody, talk out the numbers, which is what I think we really. I'll be really frank. I think that's what we have to do. But part of the discussion is to have our discussion. Frankly, most of the things that we deal with, and since I've been on the committee, most of the things we deal with tend to be pretty easy decisions. This is really one of the harder ones. I think it's one we really need to talk through.
I think my question is, how much does it affect the technology that we're bringing into the schools with the one-on-one devices? And I mean, we were at a presentation at our elementary school, and everything was cutting out and so slow, and it was really sad that and I'm like, is this because it's a slow or not a large enough being, like, I don't understand it enough, but
It's one slice, certainly. There are other upgrades that I will be coming to you, not this year, maybe towards the end of next year as we look into, again, this will be an E-rate expenditure where I'll be asking you to consider upgrading the access points. So there's 2 access points in this room that work at 900 megabytes. So that's the fastest they can currently support, is 900 megabytes worth of traffic. So what you're referencing is the more people you get in a room, that 900 megabytes really starts to get squeezed, and some people will start dropping out. For example, at the high school, we have the guest network where we only give them that much of the total bandwidth, and we save the rest of the bandwidth for, the teachers and students on the Chromebook. Right now, the APs, the access points that are being sold, support 3.5 gigabytes per access point. So in here, we have, less than 2 gigabytes of capacity. Now, we replace these with 2 access points, we'd have 7 gigabytes, and that's going towards that whole 10 gigabit WAN. So it is a piece of the puzzle.
And I'll tell you, the funny thing about technology, and I'm a bit of a techno geek guy, and I'm not a physics geek, but I'm going to use a physics metaphor here for a second. I don't know if anybody in the room ever taught physics, but you learn in physics that gas will expand to fill a container. Okay, internet bandwidth does the same thing. When you give people more bandwidth, they use it and they find ways to use it. okay? So I'm not saying that, the answer is, oh, well, you keep it low, so then they can't use more, and that solves the problem. It doesn't. I mean, but as soon as if you quadruple the bandwidth available to our schools, what's going to happen is, everything's going to feed up. One problem with that, and this was going to be one of my next questions, is when we increase the bandwidth to that level, that's going to require, to fully access that bandwidth everywhere, is going to require some other technology upgrades with routers and access points and things like that. And what will be surprising is how fast that all gets sucked up. I mean, even when we quadruple, it's going to all of a sudden, you're going to be like, wow, everybody used it all. It's just what happens.
And that's one of the interesting parts about, again, going back to bandwidth is our speed to the outside internet. WAN is our inside internet. So the Google Cache servers, which, again, we're a G Suite, it used to be called Google Apps for Education District, now called G Suite. That's what we're using every day. And that's what we'd be getting at the full 10 gig bandwidth speeds. And it's when you go out to, Projo.com or CNN or ESPN, that's when, actually, I'm sorry, ESPN is even on the Google, but, it's when you start getting services that aren't on the second tier or the Beacon network. That's where you start using your allotted bandwidth of, for next year, we're looking at 500 megabyte bandwidth. This year we're at 300 megabytes. Next year 500. So that's where you start using that allotment, is when you're going outside. This would keep us inside at 10 gig. Again, right now this year we're limited to this. This is our, all these numbers turn to 10,000 MB from what they are now.
Do you know if the General Assembly is aware of this increasing projected shortfall?
I can't speak to that. I do not know if they're aware. I have heard that there has been talk of putting a tax or a fee on cell phones, but it never makes its way out of. Thank you.
Well, I mean,
because you can look at your cell phone bill now and see
most of them aren't taxable.
fees, or call it what you want. It's going thing, and you have things like that go to the 911 thing that don't all go to the 911 thing.
Right.
So, I guess my feeling is, it's a great math problem, and we could calculate a probability range that makes this a positive NPV project or not. But this is also one of the few times where we get out in front of things. I know we're trying to do it in the larger scale with the long-term infrastructure planning, and to give the voters, hopefully in a year or year and a half, a vision that's getting out in front of where we want to be 10, 20, 30 years from now. But my sense is, if you have to think about where the future of where assistant superintendent weigh in, but teaching and learning, it's not about going to less, and it's not about going back to stubby pencils. Although I don't know what we do if the electricity went out like the old days, but that genie's out of the bottle. But this is a chance for us for an investment we know is being partially paid for, and has some chance of being a positive net present value thing, given the General Assembly's appetite on other things is much more pressing than issues like this, I think. But to also set us up in terms of 5, 10, 15 years from now, having the infrastructure in place. My concern would simply be, sometimes you don't want to be too out in front. But, if the recommendation is this is posturing us where we have the flexibility to really adapt and be agile and mobile 5, 10, 15 years from now, it's only going to get more costly to wait.
And you're right. So in a couple of years, I could be back saying I would like to trim these 10 gig tips off, and the next step up right now is 25 gigs. And the cost for that is X, Y, or Z. But now we've just upgraded it for a significantly less cost than what it would be to do at the time.
But you're not running the fiber again in that.
Correct.
You're just putting new equipment on either end,
Correct.
and it's just a new box.
Correct.
So One of the things that I find appealing about this is the disaster recovery implications. So right now you said we have a backup at Davisville Middle and that's all?
We have, so depending on what the data is, we have some data backed up in the cloud. So if teachers and students are using Google Docs, that's all backed up in the cloud. If folks are storing their, we call them the H drives, which is your local network drive, that is backed up at the data center. Then, and the information that's backed up at the data center is this building and the high school, because we're connected. And we have a backup of that backup at Davisville Middle School. At each elementary school, I referenced those mini data centers. We have non-enterprise level backup strictly because of the cost. We couldn't have full enterprise level backup at each building. The physical locations aren't set up for it, and the cost would be outrageous. So the same backup you might have at home is what we're using in other schools to back up teachers' data at those schools. And Chris Scheib and Jason McGuire, they're checking those drives. Those are networked so they can check in, and there is redundancy in there. So if one drive fails, there are 2 hard drives in there. So there's a backup of the backup. But if there's ever a disaster at, I'll pick on Winford Middle School because that's my old stomping grounds. If that room ever flooded, we could be in trouble.
Gotcha. And so
That solves this. And again, it goes back to taking those mini data centers where we have a park server that we use for other network services in each school. We now route that back to our building. Instead of having 10 little servers, we have one larger server that costs less than the 10 little servers.
I've been thinking about the metaphor of a gas expansion.
Because it works.
Well, it does with gas. But we're expanding our use of technology. I mean, we just went one-to-one as a whole district. Dr. Humbert gave you a sheet that we're going to talk about with the technology purchases tonight. You asked for kind of a comprehensive review of the technology used in the district. And there's a whole second page here, and this is about a quarter of the types of sites that teachers on their own free are accessing. But we're just getting started. So there's going to be an increased use of technology and an increased requirement to have broadband, whether we like it or not. What I like about this is it gives us control to do that expansion as needed. Whereas if we don't do that, we're obviously at the mercy of the state. And we may
But right now, they also pay for all of it.
Well, I agree, but we don't know that to be the case.
That may not be true.
They pay for all of it on a limited basis, so that's the other.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
So they're paying for all of it at the full rate,
Yeah, no, I hear you.
so.
Yeah.
As part of the individualized learning and trying to increase offerings at the high school, are we also considering online courses?
You want to handle that?
Yeah, so they are doing some limited at this point online courses. I can explain it on the sheet. There's some possibilities, but they're also doing the other things that Barbara Morse, thank you, had told us about, that the Rhode Island networking courses that the students can take. So it's growing. And with the scheduling for next year, too, there's probably going to be room to expand that even more.
So, Mrs. King, I think, it's gonna, when you have the bandwidth, you're going to use it. That's the reality of it. Just make sure the kids don't use it to watch more YouTube videos.
Well,
That's what my son does.
what I'm worried about is we're going to expand anyway, and
Will they bottleneck?
we'll either then we'll have bottlenecks if we don't expand our capacity.
So, Mrs. King, on the the $195,000 question is, so we'd be, if we approve this evening, taking this from fund balance.
Correct.
Where does that leave us in undesignated, unallocated, I don't remember the exact words that we've had, fund balance?
We're just a little over $2 million right now. I'm looking at a $400,000 surplus about this year. But we're also pending, as of Friday, the bids for the phase 2 of the high school heating ventilation system. And the town has funded $500,000 on that, but the estimates were closer to 7. So we might need to kick in a little bit there.
Did we already allocate part of that, or not yet? Not yet. Okay.
Not
We
yet.
just sort of
You're
said
getting
that.
confused with the electrical work.
Okay, well, I know when we did that too, we said if the town didn't kick in, we'd be committing to
Well,
do it.
and we did that.
But
We
we
did
haven't
that.
physically committed the money on either.
Not yet, not yet. And there are several things that Dr. Auger and I want to do, or want to try to get approval on also for this summer. But, you know, like we said, this does help teaching and learning. It's going to help teaching and learning in the long run. And it really, it's different from the things I bring to you, because the things I bring to you are capital investment, but this could have a long-term dollar
There's
value
a
return.
real potential return.
Right.
And even if our worst case scenario, which isn't that worst of a case scenario, is that we've drastically increased the bandwidth throughout the school district and gained a great amount of control over the network. The best case scenario would be, if we don't do this, our nightmare scenario, which is the entire reimbursement from the state goes away, and we now get stuck with $100,000 internet bill. Well, in this case, we won't have that kind of an issue. It would be $21,000.
Right, it would be the $18,000.
I mean, we have more than $20 million in capital needs. I mean, you have to put a
I know we
priority
have to
on
prioritize
things.
things.
And again, it has a return on investment that is better than some of the things that we usually look at. Potential return on investment, and besides the increased bandwidth, which is really your bigger return on investment. Even at this point, as we sit here, you know it's not adequate for the schools.
And sorry, it's 195,000?
Our 50% is 195,474, 195,237.
Important question. I know you covered this a little in the last presentation. Is there a scenario where we could get stuck with the whole bill? Or do you know before we spend a dime that we are guaranteed to get our 50%?
Yes, in the RFP, so nothing is guaranteed through E-rate and USAC. So this is step one. Step one is your approval, your commitment of 50%. I then move forward and say to E-rate, we are asking for 50% reimbursement on this proposal. There'll be a series of back and forths. I believe they call them PIA reviews, where they're going to ask questions and we're going to have to provide information. And then they will render a decision as to whether they're funding it or not. Throughout the RFP, we did write that we can withdraw the request at any point.
Okay.
So you
if our request for the 50% E-rate reimbursement is denied, we can cancel everything
Correct.
without spending the money.
we do not move forward with
So
the project.
there is not a scenario, though, where by approving going forward today, all of a sudden, whatever, everything falls apart, and we are now committed to paying the full bill.
No, nope.
Okay. That's it. All right. Are there more questions? The decision item on our agenda is a couple items down. I was going to exempt it, so we can all sort of think on it for a little bit and talk about it one more time and decide what we're going to do when we get to it. Thank you very much. We may have
I'm
more
up again.
questions when we get back to it in a couple of minutes.
Mr. Ward also has the next presentation.
Okay.
Which is.
Website selection.
Website selection, yes.
It's technology night.
It is.
Okay. I'm going to try and turn the page here. So, we are June 30th, 2017 is our last year, is the last year of our contract with, I'm drawing a blank here. Edline, who has been purchased by Blackboard. Thank you. We could extend it for one more year, and then the product is completely end of life. Blackboard is not supporting it anymore. One of my goals for this year was to investigate going with a new web page vendor, company, provider, however you want to refer to them as. So let me talk to you about the process. So the selection team and process, selection team was made up of members of central administration, principals. Each school has a tech lead teacher. We did not have all tech lead teachers or all web page webmasters take part, but we did have representation from both groups. And our webmasters include teachers, clerks, TAs, and even a member of my staff, as well as myself. And the IT staff also sat in, because one of the things I believe in my department is a lot of cross-training, is somebody being able to pick up somebody else's roles, responsibilities in case one person's on vacation. This way, not one person holds all the knowledge. Our timeline, so we started back in January where we talked about it at our district technology meeting. February 17th, I sent an email out to members of central administrations, principals, tech leads, kind of just asking who wants to be involved in this, who wants to help out. Going back to last June, I actually, I get a lot of cold calls. People want to sell us a lot of stuff. So I've just been taking cards for anybody who wanted to provide us with a new and better webpage. So I provided the team who responded to the February 17th email with a list of 7 potential vendors, as well as, hey, if you see any cool school websites, let me know. Let me try and do a little background to see who hosts them, who provides them, so that we can include them. We did have one person find a really nice one, but it was really far out of our price range. So I didn't want to bring it to the table just to say, no, we can't do it. So we excluded that one. So between the 26th and the 13th, 26th of February and 13th of March, I gave the companies as well as sample websites. So live schools who they're currently hosting. Some of them were also government, public entities. On the week of the 13th, I asked the group to rank your top 3. So tell me, and there was no information of pricing. It was just, here are the 7, rank your top 3 for me. We'll put them together, and then we're going to bring them in for a demonstration, or as I started calling it, a little Shark Tank. Once I had the top 3 selections, it was very close between 3 and 4, so I cut down the demonstration time and brought in 4 companies. But while that was happening, I was getting pricing information from the top 4 just to make sure it was feasible with whoever we were going with, that we had that money budgeted. The week of the 27th, we scheduled the presentations for the 13th, and then the 13th, the day before vacation, I was joined by some very dedicated colleagues, and we were here till about 7 p.m. reviewing the webpage providers and offering our thoughts. So after the 7, these were how the rankings came out. So it's pretty clear to see final site, and I did color code. I apologize if a couple of them are bleeding together a little bit. But final site was highly regarded. Edleo was highly regarded. Blackboard was highly regarded. And VTS was also highly regarded. So they were offered the 30-minute Shark Tank presentation. I was very clear with them that I was giving them 30 minutes, and it was up to them how they wanted to use it. I gave them some information about our district and that we're Google Apps for Education. We'd love some Google integrations, so some nice Google integration into their products, so highlight that. Also highlight the fact that we have 400 teachers and not many of them have extensive web page design or knowledge on how to build a web page. So we want a product that anyone can use with some training, but with minimal training. So this was the pricing from the top 4 companies. Final Site, who was pretty universal, as I'll go back one slide real quick. Final Site, who came in first in many people's, happened to be the most expensive. They ranged anywhere in setup fees, which is a one-time fee, $10,000 up. $10,000 to $15,000 was if you wanted to just take a template and put your information in there. $15,000 to $20,000 was if you wanted to take all their templates and just kind of, I like this piece from this template, etc. And then $20,000 plus, and they really said that number is $30,000 plus if you want a blank slate and you want to do whatever you want. Edleo, if you wanted, again, the blank slate is $4,500, and if you wanted a template, it was $2,500. One thing that was a little different about Edleo's templates is that they call them templates, but they're designs that they put up. And Dr. Auger and I actually experienced this. Is they put up designs, and you basically claim them. So once you sign a contract with them, they say, okay, you signed a template contract. These are our current designs that are available. So whatever design you grab is yours. It doesn't mean that the next school down the street gets that same design, because not every template, even though they call it a template, is the same. Does that make sense? Blackboard, who's our current provider, so Blackboard purchased Edline. Their setup fees would be $4,650, and VTS included their setup fees in their hosting fee. So the hosting fee is your annual charge to host your website. Final Site was $12,500 per year. Edleo was $8,000 per year. Blackboard was $7,873.92 per year. And VTS was $9,500 per year. So while we had our Shark Tank presentation, Kim Ramos, who is our district technology coach, created this document that was provided to anybody who wanted it. Can you see that okay? I can zoom it.
Your laptop is on your packet too, so it's easy to see there.
That's better.
So this is what we looked for, and again, I won't read them to you, but I'll just give you a moment to look. But this is what we were looking for our new provider to be able to provide to us on a web page. Is it okay if I scroll down a little bit? And one more scroll.
So Morgan, can you talk just a little bit about some of the
Certainly.
not every one, but some of the key features
Okay.
that the group found the most valuable in making their decision?
So ADA compliance was not one of the things that was high on people's even knowledge list, that web pages now need to be ADA compliant, but it was one of the things that the vendors talked about and how you make a web page ADA compliant, and that you don't just put an image up there, that you include text, readable text, so people who are using device readers can actually visit your web page. Responsive web design across platforms was a very big feature. So how many times have you been to a web page and it looks one way on your phone and a completely different way, almost like an app on your, you've been onto a web page on your computer or your tablet and it looks one way, you go to your phone and it almost looks like an app. That's pretty cool. And that's one of the things we were looking for, is that something that as the screen size shifts, gets larger or smaller, the experience stays the same, but, the experience changes, but all the information stays the same. I think we've all been there where you've got your phone out and you're trying to read something, but not only do you have to scroll up, down, but you also have to scroll left, right. So we don't want that. We want to be able to resize so that we understand on a smaller device we're going to have to go up and down a little bit more, but we don't want to have to go up, down, left, right. The announcement feature, so that was a feature that I discovered this year on our webpage. So I don't know if anybody went to our webpage on the school closing days, but you actually had to click through. So when you went to nksd.net, a pop-up came up that you had to acknowledge that said no school, due to weather. You can do any type of on-screen alert either at the district level or at the school level. So and that's just, you visit the webpage. Some people may find them annoying. I think a lot of times when you visit certain web pages, that first alert or pop-up is an ad. And no, I don't think we can sell ads on our web page, but that's an alert or a pop-up. I can see your mind moving, Mary. I talked briefly about the ready-made templates versus the custom design. Teacher pages, again, ease of use, from the folks who were sitting at the table, was big. Our current one was, for many people, was not easy to use. Once you got the hang of it, it wasn't too bad, but you had to really dig in to get the hang of it. And then training and support, we asked about, what would be included in the price, what, if we needed additional, what that pricing would include. And then a timeline. I thought starting this in January, we were going to be in good shape. But depending on the type of web page you select, some of them were up to 6 months. So knowing that our current contract was expiring June 30th and us wanting to have a fully functional live web page on July 1 was important to me, as it was the rest of the staff. And with our recommendation, we accomplish that actually ahead of time, where we're going to live in a parallel world where we're going to have a beta site and we're going to have our nksd.net. So folks are going to be able to work on both pages simultaneously, so people can move information from our current solution to our new solution. Excuse me. And then I briefly spoke about, all right, where's my cursor? I lost it. And we briefly spoke about the integration with Google, all things Google, Google Classroom, Google Calendar was the big one. A lot of teachers are using Google Calendar because it integrates with Google Classroom, which integrates with Google Drive. So it's just a real nice, clean, upfront way to receive your information. And especially when you're looking at a district level with 9 sites, having color-coded so that an event that's in blue is the high school, green is Wickford Middle School, yellow is Davisville Middle School, something that just stands out, allowing you to subscribe to a calendar so that it appears in your own calendar. Those are all features that are part of Google that we don't currently have with our current provider because they lack the Google integration that we wanted our new provider to have. And then social media integration. So this year we started with a North Kingston School Department Facebook account and Twitter account, and we see it on a lot of web pages. When you visit there, you can see their Twitter feed or their Facebook feed right there. So we wanted to be able to integrate that into our solution. Questions on the criteria? Again, I'll have question time at the end, but figure while we're here. So the unanimous decision, so after the 30-minute Shark Tanks, our unanimous decision, and it was unanimous, was to go with Edlio. And after doing a little bit of sitting down and looking at the options that were available through Edlio, we decided, Dr. Auger and along with Dr. Humbert decided that we would go with a template. It did help with the timeline, and it's also a great-looking template that I'm going to show you here in a minute. It's not customized to North Kingstown. It is the template as we chose, but it is going to represent North Kingstown with colors, with logos, with our information. Once they have the contract, we are assigned a project manager, and they start rolling on our new webpage. So, again, $2,500 setup fee, which includes training and hosting of the temporary site, and then an $8,000 annual hosting fee. We're not locked into a 3-year contract, but I did secure 3-year contract pricing. So, I'm going to give you the wow factor now. So, this is our current webpage. It was a great upgrade from what we had at the time. This is what we're moving to. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, whoever's
They
here.
even told us that those kids would come to our high school. Really beef up the image a bit.
So I'm just going to.
We really have like I would have liked to see our own kids there.
Yeah, they would be. Absolutely. As Mr. Mortimer said, that template is reserved for us right now. So no other school in the country will have that look. They'll have probably something like it, but not that one.
And this will be, so these first picture will scroll on its own, but if you're sick of looking at these kids, because your children are up on page 3, you can click right here and tell all your friends to click 2 times, and then you'll see their picture.
So you don't have to wait for it to come around again like we do now?
You don't have to wait for it to come around again.
I've done that before. You're on there and you're like, oh wait, I know, they're gone. 5 minutes later, they're back again.
It doesn't even give you a little dot to click on to go back to that picture.
A scrolling marquee at the district level. So each portion of this is a module. So I've been told that even though this is a template, and I'm going to scroll right to the bottom and I'll go back up, but I don't believe any of our elementary schools currently have a social media presence. So our option here is, well, we can take it out, or we could substitute it with another module. I asked, well, what are the other modules I can choose from? They said, that's really something that your project manager will cover with you, because they don't want to do something that's too redundant. They want it to look like a nice clean document or a nice clean page. So they weren't willing to give me the module playbook and let me start, taking stuff out.
Probably plug in like a calendar there instead.
Correct.
Or your listserv,
So we'll go back up to the next section. These are all customizable, as are these up here. We also talked about, I said we want to be able to lock this in. So this top header gets locked in where it says Home, About Us, Programs. So as you slide down, that's still remaining up there, which I think is an important feature. Again, these can be links to Aspen, to whatever we want it to be. I mean, our options are endless as far as what we say and what emblems we choose. I thought this was a great looking calendar with the background picture. News, and again, we can have the arrow here so you can click through. You can click here and it could open up in a new window. You can have, unfortunately I can't click on any of this because this is a frozen template, so none of this is live, but we could have a video up. We can have a video running as a background. So instead of this being a picture of a brick building, this could be a picture of kids getting on the bus. So it's a subtle background image. There's really a lot of nice, neat things we can do. And we can keep it so we have the same look and same feel across the district. Again, maybe elementary schools don't have that social media presence. That's down here. Maybe we substitute something else in there, whether it be a calendar or something that's just customized for them, or we just remove it, to keep that clean look. And again, down here, contact information, mapping location. This right here is one example of the Google integration.
And we talked about how that, what you're looking at could be a district page, but then every school would have their own page that would look identical to that, but with the school's own colors.
Mm-hmm.
And, could have the superintendent's picture on the front page, but you could have the principal's picture on all the separate pages, or we could just not do the superintendent's picture altogether. It'd be a nicer looking page, with that in mind. But you get the idea. You can, each school has that basic template as well, customized to that school.
Again, this is going to be a great
It's a uniformity factor.
before and an after.
Well done.
And really, we paid whatever the Blackboard number was, $7,800 and something dollars. That's what we're currently paying. With your permission, I'm going to round it off to $8,000. We're currently paying $8,000 to host Edline. This same solution is going to be $8,000. So for me, I think this is a very
So it's
easy.
just the setup fees is the only new.
Correct.
I'm assuming the mobile app will be a lot better than the mobile app.
So they say, let me see here. So with the responsive design,
Site, it's almost non-existent
Right.
now.
so this version that they're giving me is not showing.
Right.
But they did during the Shark Tank. They did show how as you slide it. Was this did they have the 5 points? 5 different screen sizes. I believe it was Ed Leo who offered looks at 5 different screen sizes. So whether you're on a 16:9 or 16:10 widescreen versus maybe a tablet that's not quite that resolution or aspect ratio versus a phone, they did have multiple points of resizing, so it looks different at different sizes. Yes.
So, just to play devil's advocate.
Okay.
Can you put that back up?
This one here?
Yeah.
Certainly.
So, and scroll to the top. So I, for one, when you said the wow factor, and I was not.
You didn't see it.
saying that, no. And
Okay.
I have to say that, I agree, that's a beautiful quality picture, high quality. But when I go to a website, what I'm looking for, especially North Kingstown Schools website, I'm going there for information, not pictures. And I think, in my career, I've learned that when I have to provide information to people receive information in many different ways. So some people want to read, some people want to look at charts and graphs, some people want to look at pictures, some people want to look at maps, and the great thing about a website like this, but you can build it with different modules, is you can provide information in many different ways. But when you first go to a website, especially those links at the top, I think they're very valuable. But the most important, most commonly accessed things, I think, have to be front and center. I find it really annoying when you have to go scrolling down and having to look for something. You know, I want information.
And that's right. And this is where we would, in this top section that's, from my angle, it looks beige. I'm not sure if it's white. But in this top section, the home, the about us, the program, the athletics, we could.
That's identical to what we have on our page.
Right. We could take what we have here and place this information here. And they have what they call mega drop downs. So you can have, are you familiar with the term?
Well, I know, like this.
Correct.
Scrolling over it and then a drop down opens up.
But then you click on this and then you come over here to links. It gives you just a little description of what's going to happen there. That's what's going to live. That's what's going to live here. So you click on this, and then almost a full, I don't want to say almost a full-size window, but a larger window opens up, and that's where you keep all your links, your important information. So what we see across the top here, we really can just substitute what it says here. And I'm going to try and pull these a little side by side just to make it a little bit easier for me going back and forth here.
Everybody's got to get different. It's sort of like when your kids or your husband go to the refrigerator and everything's not on the top shelf in the front, because not everything can be on the top shelf in the front.
Yeah.
But as you pointed out, that bar stays on the top shelf in the front. Even if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the website, that bar will stay there. But that's different from our website right now.
So as we scroll, we've lost school committee, administration, schools. As we're scrolling down, we can still this. I'm just
The
going
bar
to
stays there, the pictures scroll.
This part right here is staying locked in, and then the pictures are kind of scrolling up behind it. So the important information, the information we have here, stays here, and then you're able to find other information.
And now is the Facebook, Twitter, and all that always going to be at the top?
On this one, it is on the bottom.
Oh, it's right there, the link. Oh, that was linked.
Oh, okay. So right. So it could be. It could be, or it could be embedded down at the bottom. And there are other, what do they have there? Facebook, Twitter, and I believe that's Instagram. You know, we can have LinkedIn. We can have other social media presence, or we can have none at all here.
We found that, and this is a sample of that too, that we can actually have the pages live. So you actually see the last couple of entries. And it's not just a link. You see them scrolling in real time. For Facebook and for Twitter. So, and those are items that I and people from the technology office are putting from things happening in the district. It's not that any student or any parent can register a complaint that gets on the Twitter page. It's just our page.
Social media.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
The Russians hack it.
I just have a comment to further Sheila's point. I like it as a beautiful website. It doesn't feel to me like a school district website. Maybe once it gets more customized.
Would you like to see some? I can show you some live EdLeo examples if you.
Yeah, that might help.
If you give me a minute, I just have to search through.
It feels like a college. Like I feel like it's. College. Like even the calendar.
I mean, maybe it's just because of the picture to me. It would appeal to like high school students or college age students. Like it just doesn't have the feel of like a school district.
For you as a parent.
Well, the pictures, remember the pictures are.
I know, but it's still.
One of the,
Go ahead, if I may, while I'm
Yes.
searching for that. So I have a suggestion. Maybe the committee's already thought of this, but on the elementary schools where they might not have a need for those particular, modules, we also were handed this tonight, various.
yes.
So perhaps giving parents access to additional resources that they could use, that are education related, and, make some more.
PTO, whole PTO section.
We don't need, I don't know, in the elementary schools, I'm not a big fan of social media for my kids. I turn it off and I don't post too much on it. It's scary out there. to
Yeah,
me. Social media and things that are on it.
Generally, it's the PTOs that have maybe a Facebook page
Yeah,
that they set up, but it's not the school.
Right.
Yeah. But for the elementary level, anyway. And at the high school, the athletics
Right.
has one.
Right, I think it's fine for the high
boosters,
school, I
yeah,
guess,
yeah.
elementary school kids.
So here are two. So this one is,
Gateway Gators?
the Gateway Gate. I think this one is Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not one of my favorites.
I'm sure I want to see the parking lot.
So here, so you asked for an alert. Here's an example of an alert. So here's got an example of scrolling through the pictures or letting them happen.
Some of the same features.
Mhm.
Right.
So he gave us a list of his top 10. Let's see. It's a little nerve-wracking going through your email.
I'm live streaming.
Don't worry, all of North Kingstown's watching. That's all.
Let's see here. Here it is. So one of the things I neglected to mention is one of the other bits of information I know the high school found interesting is this also links to an e-commerce where they could sell dance tickets. I don't know if at the high school if we charge for parking passes, but you can buy and collect money right through your webpage. You can have forms that you fill out and then pay for certain information. I did neglect to.
So it's school lunch?
School lunch is already going swimmingly.
Okay.
Field trips, things like that could be used.
Yes. Yes. Yep. So here's another one, Durango.
This is something similar to what we were considering.
So here's an example of as I scroll, this top is getting locked in. I just want to see if anybody has any mega menus.
Mike, what's that website you're on?
This is durangoschools.org. Here's the calendar with this was the bus loading in the background.
Yeah.
I thought that was very neat.
Right. Like someone's building a school.
I agree.
But it shows you all the difference.
Yeah.
So here's a scroll going across the top.
Yeah.
You can have this built in, so there are a lot of options there. I do want to find somebody who has the. So here's an example of the mega menu, where I'm just going to go back real quick. See here, everything drops straight down.
Yeah. Side by side.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can have it offer additional information either instead of a photo or just a brief description of what you're going to see when you go there.
Yeah, definitely it's better live.
Well, it makes sense.
You had the video piece too. It's a nice feature.
And when you add your colors,
Right.
when this is the North Kingstown logo with the black and gold, or when you're at the, again, I'm going to pick my old stop girls, which are middle school, you've got the royal blue with the wildcat. It feels more like it's yours and it's built for you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Enough of me, okay.
Don't go anywhere.
Dr. Jean just wanted to mention.
So for the recognitions piece tonight on the agenda, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this that you have in front of you tonight, and many households in North Kingstown. There are extra copies up in the back if anyone in the audience would like to look at one. And these have gone in the mail to every resident of North Kingstown and Jamestown. I think it's kind of along the same theme as the webpage. It builds a presence. It's very sharp. It's professional looking, and it highlights the kinds of things that we would like to highlight for the community. Knowing that public schools more and more are in competition with other districts for all kinds of things, particular students themselves and the tuitions that come with them. I think it's very important to continually put our best foot forward and project the excellence that we have in the district. And I think the webpage speaks to that, and this is another effort in that regard. It's a hard copy item. This will also be posted this week on our webpage, as poor as that current one is, but it will be there for anyone to see throughout the year until we update it to the next copy in the next year. So just want people to be aware of that. Thank you.
Next item is citizens' comments. I have one person who signed up, Jacob Mather. If you could come to the microphone, and if you could please state your name and address for us.
Hi, my name is Jacob Mather. My address is 135 West Allenton Road in North Kingstown. I'm a father of a first grader at Hamilton Elementary School. I'm also a small business owner in town, and I'm PTO president at Hamilton Elementary School. Here to ask for support and ask for your approval of the donation that is being offered to Hamilton Elementary School for their Teachers Lounge renovation, being generously offered by Kitchens and Countertops of New England. I don't know if you probably know, but Kitchens and Countertops of New England has offered to buy a new kitchen for our Teachers Lounge, which is the only working kitchen we have in the school. From stove, new refrigerators, sink, counters, countertops, and essentially everything. The kitchen's super important for our school because it's the only one. Teachers use it, obviously, but also some of the next step students use it because of dietary restrictions and stuff. My wife and I, we try to teach our children compassion and the importance of generosity, and that if we're fortunate enough to have the means of giving back to the community, then we should. And we try to be role models for our kids, and we try to surround our kids with people who can be role models as well. And I'm standing here as a hardworking volunteer in our school systems asking that we can do the right thing. And that when we encounter generous and well-meaning members of our community who are exemplifying all of the characteristics that we strive for in our students and in our kids, that we shouldn't be shutting them down or making them jump through too many hoops, and we shouldn't be making it hard for people who want to do really good things for our school. As a school, we're really fortunate to be in this situation and have unbelievably generous parents and business owners who want to do good things for our teachers, too. Our teachers are the ones who make sacrifices and work hard for our kids, and they deserve as much as we can possibly give them. And I don't want this to be brushed off as inequity, as it often can be. And the renovation really doesn't have anything to do with student educational curriculum. It doesn't have anything to do with providing a leg up for Hamilton students alone. But it has everything to do with showing our teachers appreciation that they deserve. And in so many cases, and I've said this before, people move to North Kingstown for our schools. We moved to North Kingstown for Hamilton. Not exaggerating when I say that. We bought a house in 2010 in the Hamilton district because we love Hamilton. But the reality is, with the resources that the district has, it would be impossible to implement big changes like this to every single school. So that it shouldn't mean that we don't make changes just because we can't implement them to every single school. We need to work with our community and our parent volunteers and our small business owners, and we need to make them feel like they're welcome and that their efforts and donations and support is appreciated, because without our community, our schools wouldn't survive, and they wouldn't be what they are today, and they wouldn't be the role model for the rest of the state. So thank you very much for your cooperation, or your consideration, rather.
Thank you. That's right after our consent agenda, so we'll be getting closer. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, next we have routine items. On our agenda, we have a mention of sealing executive session minutes and disclosing of votes from executive session this evening. We didn't have an executive session this evening, so we're going to pass over those two items, and there's nothing to disclose. So we've reached the consent agenda. Do any members have any items they would like to exempt? I'm going to C1, yeah, C1, and I'm also going to add C6, 7, and 8, just because we want to mention some things with respect to that. Any others? Okay, then if I could please have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of C1, C6, 7, and 8. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins.
No.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Stevens, and a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion, or was it Ms. McGovern? Sorry. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So our first exempted item is item C1, which is our E-rate. So, is that another few
Motion to
minutes?
approve C1.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So motion, Mr. Jones, second, Mrs. McGovern. Discussion. You need to talk more? Yeah, I mean, any, we'll just go in order. Ms. Stevens, you have anything you want to add?
I don't,
Ms. Hoskins?
I agree with Bob that, I mean, we went to one-on-one devices, we need the technology, we need the support for that technology going forward, or we're gonna end up at a bottleneck. I feel like when we're at the schools, a lot of times we're already there, and I can only imagine if we get more programming and things for the kids, that is just gonna get worse in that respect, so.
Thank you. Ms. McGovern?
I agree. I think that this is the unseen foundation for the whole technology initiative. And I, for one, I rely on technology and I hate paper. So I think we should do it.
Yeah, and I don't think waiting is going to get any more clarity from the state. But their intent to do things quicker. I'm sure we won't get a budget till late June or sometime in June, so we really won't have any more clarity on that aspect. And I would hate to disadvantage our staff in terms of getting things done.
And Mr. Watermeyer, I want to thank you very much for 2 rounds of very informative presentations. You've been able to answer every question that we've thrown at you, and I very much appreciate that.
And the 300 pages of
And
document.
anyone who doesn't see our full packet, we have it all.
Nobody's going to question what got voted on.
That's correct. And it has been bid out and vetted and very excellent, obviously a tremendous amount of work. And I want to just point that out and thank you for that and your staff as well. I'm comfortable as well. I wanted to make sure, talking to Mrs. King, just get another snapshot of where we stand, with respect to, fund balance. I think it's a classic example of, a good use of capital funds. As Mr. Jones said, it really is laying a foundation upon, our technology to operate. As Mrs. King pointed out, not only that, but even in our worst case scenario, we've done a great upgrade to our systems, and if things go south with the current funding systems, then we have the real potential of having saved a major expense later on. And with respect to waiting and everything, with the current federal administration, I I would be very concerned that any type of reimbursement program like this very well may not be around in a couple of years once the tides move in the directions that they're heading. So I think it's one of those now or never situations. So you have my support as well. So any other discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. We can take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So off you go. Thank you very much.
Mr. Waterman?
Thank you. So our next exempted items are C 6, 7, and 8, which are the Follett Apple Text, non-public textbooks, Renaissance, Star subscription renewal, and Lexia core student subscription. We just have a little.
Yeah, I just.
What those are about.
Following up on one of the goals of the committee, which was to do a review of technology, online technology in the district. I thought this would be a good time because we were purchasing or repurchasing, renewing some orders. So, Dr. Holmes, if you.
Thank you very much, Jay. So I think going back, it might have been Mr. Jones who had requested that we kind of have a summary of what we're using in the district. So on the first page, you see the licensed or paid programs that we're using. I think you're familiar with most of them because you've seen them come through, and you'll see most of them come through as we move forward now through June. And so, of course, 3 of them are on for tonight. So we have our STAR reading and math assessments that's used for our screening and progress monitoring. That happens 3 times a year. It provides data to us so that the kids don't fall through the cracks, and we're able to catch them and give them the interventions that they need. We have the Edgenuity, which will be coming up for renewal, I think, on our next agenda. And that is the 20 concurrent licenses that we use, mostly at the high school level, a couple at the middle school, and then we have the summer licenses, which we use in the main core areas of math, English, social studies, and science. But with those, like for the math, it would be broken down for geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2. So all of those are available to the students. If there's 5 of them that need it in the summer school program, we can service it that way. So it avoids having 1,000 teachers. We've used it rather successfully. Online programs have their limitations. When kids are not motivated and they're taking them in a summer course, they generally have not had success during the school year. So sometimes it's not the most successful approach. They need support from teachers. And then I won't go through each one of them there, but if you have any questions, you can certainly ask me. The Scholastic Storyworks is one that when the Scholastic books come in, the schools earn points, and then they can use the points to apply them to get that program. So it's not really, we really don't purchase that one, just a point of clarification there. And then on the back, I just put a sampling of some of the programs that are being used in the district, and this doesn't even include the K apps. Mr. Schreiber is here, and we're discussing those. There are multiple ones that we're using for our kindergarten level, so I didn't even put those. That would be pages. But anyway, these are some of the ones that teachers have been using on a rather frequent basis.
Thank you very much. So we need a motion and a second to approve item C 6, 7, and 8. If I can have a motion.
So moved.
Motion from Mrs. McGovern. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Ms. Stevens. Any other discussion on those items?
Number 6, that's our items that go to kids from private schools.
Right.
So I won't rehash that whole issue. But
We have no choice, you know.
Unfunded
that-
mandate
right,
that it is.
yes, the unfunded mandate it is. But my concern was, I know, given that we're required to do this, that at least our partners at the private schools don't overburden us with that. I know we kind of had a discussion, some it was good, some it was problematic. Is that sort of cooperation, maybe for lack of a better word, improved?
Yeah, it's going much more smoothly.
Okay.
You know, Mrs. King had recommended a process where we have actually moved our books. They're being housed in the schools, as opposed to parents coming here to pick them up. And you know, it was an adjustment.
Right.
And so we did have a good memory. We did have a problem with one of our private high schools, but that has come along nicely now. People are just accustomed to doing it.
Okay. That's good to know.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So the next item is what Mr. Mather had come to speak about, our donation to Hamilton Elementary School for the Teachers Lounge renovation. If, for discussion purposes, if I could get a motion to approve that item.
The other thing that I do want to make a comment on, just so everyone is clear, and Principal Donahue is clear as well. According to our town fire marshal, that kitchen can be used for heating and warming only. There cannot be extensive cooking. There can be nothing cooked in that kitchen that generates grease or anything like that. So it really needs to be very limited. So this isn't like a full-blown, we're going to make, you know, meals kind of thing. It's really just for heating and warming, and that's according to our fire marshal and his comfort zone with the, yeah.
So along those lines, I just wanted to say I'd be in favor of it as long as all necessary permits are pulled and inspections are
And they will have to be
accomplished.
right.
And
You know, I
those-
know you say it's for heating and warming, but like, Stoney had a cooking class and we were, like, it was part of our, you know, and are they gonna be able to cook anything?
But nothing that generates grease, you know, they can't be cooking meals for, you know,
No,
400
no,
kids.
right, right.
Nothing is
No.
extensive, because we don't do cooking in the kitchens
Right.
at the school for our kids either. It's just at the high school and everything gets shipped in, so it just has to be of a limited nature.
We'll have to wait to learn how to make bacon.
And no fry layers.
Not good for you.
Your own
That's
house.
McDonald's OTEC program now. So, and with respect to what Mr. McGovern said, that is just my only concern as well. So we would be supervising, you know, the vendor.
And the insurance is in there.
I was going to say insurance is good. Do they have to do the same screen? Is it going to be done over the summer or?
No, well, actually, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. I think do you know the answer to that, Mr. Mather, when they're looking to do that? It sounds rather extensive. I'm not sure if they'll be able to do that until the summer or
I
not.
think they were going to do it over the course of 2 weekends.
2 weekends.
Weekends. Okay.
Right.
It was, we were hoping to do it over Friday break, but it didn't get to come.
The concern is just, you know, people, while schools go, it wouldn't be while kids are in the building.
No,
Okay,
no.
I just need to make sure. And do people, will they have to get screened the same way our normal vendors
Yes,
do?
we have
Yeah,
requested
okay.
that as well.
All right. And I know you were talking about undue burdens and everything, and there are certain things we just have to do, you know, and we just want to make sure that all the procedures are followed. So we're good with insurance. And my other question was with respect to any demolition or removal, is that part of it as well? How, like, whatever's in there now, how is that all going?
Yes, they did agree that they would be able to take that
So
step
then-
away
okay.
for us, because otherwise that is a burden for us. But they did agree they'd be able to take the old appliances away, so that's awesome.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Blackwell,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who
Who,
made the
sorry, who
motion.
made the motion? It did happen fast. Ms. McGovern made the motion, second from Ms. Hoskins. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, you have a new kitchen coming. Teacher's Lounge, sorry, for heating and warming only. Our next business.
So no school committee meeting dinners.
Especially
That's
with
not
French fries.
400.
First item on unfinished business is the 2016-2017 school budget. Anything with respect to that? 2017-2018 school budget. CIP bond, oops, sorry. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, just get timeline clarification on where the town council is.
Yeah, are they meeting tomorrow?
Well, we do have a meeting
Yeah.
tomorrow night that's intended to be a discussion of the town council, as Mr. Mollis communicated to Dr. Ajay and I, so that there aren't any surprises. Dr. Ajay and I will be in attendance at the meeting. What I'm not clear on is if the budget vote is May 1st or May 3rd. that I don't know the answer to yet. I'm not sure that we do know the answer to that yet, but it's one of those 2 days. It has to be either next Monday or Wednesday. But other than that, I don't think we've heard a whole lot, so we'll see.
And, I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have an audit yet?
No, we do not. We are very, very close, but it is not yet complete. And I have no further information for you in that realm.
Okay, thank you.
So, on to CIP existing bond and future bond. We have an item impact of fiscal year 18 and 19 bond referendum. Any discussion on that? Or is it just informational in our packet?
Well, okay, the meeting that we were at,
Yep.
Mr. Blasberg, you were there with us. The discussion is being had by the town on the level of a bond and the timing of a bond. And what we were asked to do from that meeting is to come back to the school committee and determine the impact of, and let's talk about the dates, the impact of not asking the General Assembly this session for bonding authority, waiting until next year's session. So that would mean that a townwide referendum would be not November of 2017, but November of 2018.
Which is a
So
regular
it's 1
election
year.
as well.
And that's why I've got the FY18 versus FY19 and all that. The impact to us and what that means is that if there is a referendum that gets approved in November of 2018, we would not likely be able to do a lot of extensive work in the summer of 19 because there's just too much planning. There are too many approvals needed. The bids, the bid packages, all that. There would not be enough time. And I know it seems like there would be, but there really isn't. When you have to go through RIDE and the bidding and the pre-bid conference and the school committee and the town council and bonding, there's no time. With that said, though, I know that that does push things out a year or so, but quite frankly, we don't have any money for this summer. It's what we're taking out of fund balance. And there are still going to be some things that we're going to have to chip away at with our fund balance as well. Because if the town council does approve the full bonding capacity, right now we're told is $16.5 million, the school department would not see all $16.5 million. So there still needs to be some future discussions and longer term discussions. And the last deadline that we heard needed to get to General Assembly for approval for bonding authority, because the schools need that approval from the General Assembly, the town doesn't, but the schools do. The deadline is supposed to be May 1st. Now, Mr. Mollis is going to reach out to see if that can get extended. It's not going to get extended that far. I'm doubting that they're going to be able to go much further than May 15th for us to ask for the bonding approval. There's kind of a lot of work to do, and I would like to have money tomorrow, but the impact to us, we don't really have a plan right now. So luckily, knock on wood, we don't have anything really major at this point that's plaguing us that we don't have money for. Just that we want to get going on some sort of capital funding. But I do feel more hopeful that the town council is talking about it. So I'm not really sure what answer to give them, to be honest with you.
I think you kind of just gave it.
Yeah, right. We'd like to see it as soon as possible, but I don't think we're no further ahead, we're no further behind, really, quite honestly.
Thank you. That encompass the long-term planning section as well. I mean, it's
Well,
really, we
not
talked a
really.
lot about that at the meeting. So,
We did.
yep. Okay.
The other piece of that is at the meeting, one of our council members had asked for an estimate of the cost to renovate the Winford Middle School. So what Dr. Rouget and I need to hear from you today is if you would like me to ask our architect for a proposal for him to do that, but the complication with that is that unless we know what type of renovation we're talking about, he really can't provide you with any ranges. He can't provide you with any square foot cost. Are we talking windows? Are we talking roof? Are we talking ADA? Are we talking gutting the building? he's not able to do that unless we have some parameters around that. And it seems a little premature to me, but certainly we wanted to bring that forward to you, that one council member asked for that information. And we wanted to get your guidance and your thoughts on moving forward with that.
Well, I was at them. Maybe you want to go first? Yeah.
Sorry, I just, that is not one of the recommendations of the NESEC, right? That's not the plan for the school district.
No, because it doesn't solve your other problems.
No.
It doesn't
Right.
solve no gyms at 2 of our elementary schools. It doesn't reduce your number of schools. It doesn't. That doesn't answer.
So it seems like it would be an expense to come up with that number, and it can't be considered in isolation. It needs to be considered as part of an overall, okay, if you did this, we also need these other things.
Agreed.
So it's got to be part of a package.
But we
I-
did want to bring that forward.
I mean, I was at the meeting, and I understand that the question was really sort of okay, you're talking about potentially decommission. We were talking a lot about decommissioning the Winford Middle School due to its age, being the oldest building, all the things that we've discussed at length. And the question was, well, why can't you renovate that school? And we gave the example that, it's more expensive to renovate the old building than it probably is to build a new one. And the question was made, well, what do you have figures for that? And I agree. I mean, I think, I don't see that, seeing as it's not part of our plan, it's not part of our consultant's recommendation, that has never been something that we've, looked at for exactly the reason that it would be more expensive. I think the best we could do would be perhaps to ask him to put in general terms the complications. I mean,
I did speak to him, and I asked him to send me an email. And Mr. McGovern, being an engineer, I'm sure can corroborate this. He said that he would hesitate to give a square foot cost to renovate any old building without first knowing some idea what's involved with a renovation project. For instance, will the renovation include new windows, exterior masonry restoration, roofing, site improvements, etc.? Some renovations involve extensive demolition, some involve asbestos abatement, some involve complete replacement of mechanicals, fire alarm systems, security, technology systems, lighting, etc. So he's very familiar, our architect is very familiar with Winford Middle School, but putting an estimate even on a square foot basis, unless you're saying you want to gut the place, or you just want a science lab, you want to take care of the windows. I mean, maybe we could ask him to give us a range on the windows. We know windows have been discussed quite a bit, but
What about making it ADA compliant?
Well, I mean, I think the answer might be as simple as, the problems with that building have to do with its entire footprint, its entire configuration. It was built as a school in the 1930s.
and he knows that, and that's why
It is not, and I think this is our answer. I mean, it is not a 21st century school. And it was not built for the type of education that we provide today. It was not built with the model of education that we have today. It was not built with the facilities that we need today. So you can't reconfigure the physical constraints of that building in any way to create a school like the school that we would want to have in our district. And I think that's the answer. So I don't want to spend any money.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and I appreciate maybe, in light of the town hall and all that, the council's interest in thinking about our infrastructure and stuff, but I would go so far as to say, we have no intent of spending a dime of education and taxpayer money on an option we know is a non-starter. It's like Mr. Waterman's example of this really great website, but we just know it's too expensive, so why go there? I think our position to the council should simply be, it is the long-term intent of the school committee to give that building back to you. So you go ahead and say, whatever you think is best. If it's to renovate it for something, knock yourself out. If it's to convert it to a town hall or town governance center one day, knock yourself out. But our intent is to give that building back to you. The sooner you start sort of accepting that future and moving forward with that, the less time we waste sort of spending money and having discussions on things that don't solve the real problems the town has. Which we need to consolidate our schools and put ourselves in a leaner, more efficient posture going forward, putting it's either a big number, a really big number, or a super big number, but it's a big number. And I think that's enough to know that we don't need to spend a dime figuring out the size of a really big number. So I don't mean to be sort of cynical, it's just, I think it's taking away attention and focus from the real problems we need to solve.
I agree. It's becoming a deflection, and we really need to talk about the long-term plan. I mean, if you're talking about renovating the building for an office building, you're talking about a heck of a lot less money than you are for a school building.
And it's
I've
not
tried to communicate that so
It's not the
many
same
times.
issues, because a lot of
Not
our
at
issues are
all.
the footprint of the building, the way the building is configured.
Right.
And what you can do with, how many stories is it? I forgot, I mean, I don't go in there.
Three.
Yeah, 3 stories. So, I mean, what you can do with a 3-story office building is completely different than what you can do with a 3-story school. I mean, it's just,
And
we
a
don't
little
build things like that
historical
anymore.
perspective, the bond that the district had in 2011, which was about $6.4 million, that originally was a $50 million plus bond. The number one feature of that was the renovation of Winford Middle School, with an addition on the front to actually put the front office, get this now, in the front of the school. Right now it's in the middle of the school, so you have to walk through half the school before you get to the front office, which is, the first faux pas on security. And that's just the beginning of the issues with Winford Middle School as a building. So, so that was at least about $44 million of that bond with the reduction. When the recession hit and RIDE was not reimbursing much anymore, they just said only ADA compliance and real safety issues, and that limited us to about $6 million, the top item on that, and then became the roof at Winford, Davidson Middle School.
And I think, the other point is, whatever the really big number is, you tack on the opportunity cost of not fixing our school start times. You tack on having to add 2 gyms at schools to correct an equity issue that's persisted for a long time. It's the opportunity cost of, if we were able to close a couple of schools, what could we do with those properties? Add on infinitum, all these other things that, like you just pointed out, provide the full context. So again, I would just respectfully maybe ask the town council to think of the bigger picture of what they want to do with Winford Middle, not what we want to do.
I think we need to have one plan, an agreed upon plan, and that might mean we investigate a couple of different options, but it's going to be difficult for us to respond to tons and tons of side questions all the time. And I think we need to have a concerted consensus of this is what we're looking at going forward. Otherwise, we are going to be going off into a bunch of different directions and wasting energy and possibly resources in doing that. And maybe at some point we will look at that, but I just think that we all need to agree to that to move forward.
I would echo that point and go as far as to say that before we break for the summer, the school committee may want to put a proposal in front of the town council for them to have something to vote on. Maybe not all the nitty-gritty details, but that this is the direction the school committee wants to move in. Basically, everything Mr. Jones just talked about, pros and cons, the opportunity costs, all involved. Here's how we want to do it, because it was pretty clear from the discussion. And to be fair, I mean, we were just starting the discussion of the first night, and it was a very pleasant meeting for the most part to get the ideas out there. But it was quickly to be realized that people looked like they were a little overwhelmed by the options in front of them, and it was, well, you know, if we do 16.5 million now, does that destroy any opportunity for something more along our vision in the long term? Do we have to do 16 million now? Could it be less? Could it be more? There were all kinds of questions, more questions than answers. And I think it would really have helped, at least now that we've gotten that out of the way, and we get to the next stage to say, you know, this is what this group wants to do. Are you in? You know, do you want to add to it? Do you want to subtract from it? But there's something to focus on.
Next, we had in our packet disclosure notification. Any questions or comments on that? If not, we have reached the end of our agenda, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Jones, seconded by Ms. Hoskins. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.